direct to you. That's my wonderful town.
I should mention that we are not here representing our congregations, but we have come together as Christian and community leaders to stand together in support of this ordinance. I'd also like to apologize that I have nothing more interesting to look at than me. Many people build a case against gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender orientations on Scripture. As Christian leaders who also take the Bible very seriously, we firmly believe that gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender orientations are fully compatible with a godly life, and we urge that they receive equal status and rights in the public square. They are part of God's diverse creation, and God does not make mistakes. Often people who love and trust the Bible have never given prayerful and careful thought and consideration to what the Bible does and does not say about homosexuality. Many Christians don't know that Jesus says nothing about same-sex behavior. The prophets are silent on the matter. Only 3 verses in the entire Bible have anything to say specifically about same-sex activity, and none of those verses refer to same-sex relationships as they are understood today. Most Christians are unaware that one of the first converts to Christianity was a eunuch, a sexually ambiguous person, a third gender in the ancient world, if you will, and was not labeled confused or asked to change their gender or sexual status upon conversion. That's in Acts chapter 8, verses 26 and following. Many in the church are not aware that Jesus affirmed that some eunuchs are born that way prior to the act of castration, Matthew 19, verses 11 to 12. According to Jesus, eunuchs are exempt from the Adam and Eve style heterosexual marriage paradigm. Most are not aware that the alleged anti-gay passages understood in their proper cultural, doctrinal, historical, and religious context deal with pagan worship and culture, not with loving same-sex relationships. Just as scriptural teaching against heterosexual rape does not prohibit loving heterosexual relationships, so scriptural injunctions against cultic same-sex practices do not prohibit loving same-sex partnerships as they are known today. The gender and sexual orientation of a couple is not what makes a relationship sacred. The quality of love between the partners is what makes it sacred, far above anything else, and this ordinance will give long-awaited evidence to that basic truth. Still, we know that many of our brothers and sisters in the church will remain unconvinced. Therefore, we respectfully challenge those who do not support gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender orientations on biblical grounds to be consistent in their application of the Bible. There are 58 biblical references against adultery and divorce, compared with 3 against some forms of homosexual activity. Logically, this would demand nearly 20 times the amount of outrage from the opposition over those who divorce and remarry, which constitutes adultery, according to Scripture. Or at the very least, they should demand that divorced and remarried couples remain celibate while cohabitating, so as not to practice and be practicing adulterers. Furthermore, also in the name of consistency and not straining out a gnat while swallowing a camel, those who condemn GLBT orientations on biblical grounds would also be biblically bound to support slavery, the silencing of women, the treatment of women as property, polygamy, not to mention questioning democracy itself, since the primary model of government in the Bible is a military dictatorship. Make no mistake, We fully embrace the Bible as authoritative. As clergy, we have dedicated our lives to it. And yet, we recognize that cultural norms have changed. But the core truth of the Bible has not changed. The unchanging core truth of Scripture is that God created a good world. That humans have turned away from God by giving in to fear and grandiose deceptions, but that out of God's unending love, Christ was sent to seek and to save the lost. So, judge for yourselves which is right, and where the proper emphasis of Scripture lies. Is it on love, inclusion, and respect for God's creation, or is it on fear, suspicion, and exclusion? As for us, we stand with Jesus. Just as Jesus occasionally disagreed with Scripture, so do we. Just as Jesus stood for the outcast, so do we. Just as Jesus supported those who were denied access to religious and public places due to the conditions of their birth, so do we. Just as Jesus said more frequently than anything else, be not afraid, so do we. As we urge the adoption of this ordinance and as you consider the fear-based rhetoric of the opposition. When we are motivated by fear and by hate, we are never in the best place for decision-making and certainly not for the construction of public policy. Moral decline is a real concern in our world. Our current economic crisis is the latest example of this decline as the excesses of our irresponsible consumption have come home to roost. Hollywood, media, video games continue to poison our minds and trivialize human life with wanton violence and sexual obsession. We are constantly bombarded with images and signals urging us to put our faith in all the wrong places. But let us be clear. This ordinance under discussion is not part of that decline. This ordinance will not open the door to crime and chaos and destruction. Indeed, we believe the expanded ordinance brings out the best in our humanity and our society, as Lincoln said in his argument against slavery, by appealing to the better angels of our nature. Everyone will benefit from a more free and just society through the adoption of this ordinance. It will help create the kind of world that I want for my children. Change is hard. Change can be challenging. Important social change has never come easily, from the abolition of slavery to women's suffrage to the issue at hand today. And as at every turning point in history, today we are told that such a level of inclusiveness goes too far and will threaten our values. Friends, nothing is more central to our values and our faith as freedom and justice for all. As Paul said, there is no longer Jew or Gentile. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male or female. For all are one